Puja Network is proud to introduce Children of the New Earth, a groundbreaking radio show that is going to shake up and wake up adults worldwide and allow children of the new earth to breathe a sigh of relief. Finally, their profound messages for the future human and the future world will be heard. Finally, with their clear eyes, service-orientated hearts, and passion for the possible, they now have a global portal in which to reach millions. There is indeed a revolution going on inside of the evolution in consciousness. As many conscious parents, teachers, psychologists, and holistic practitioners are aware, today's children and young adults are displaying marked differences to the generations that have preceded them. They are passionate, service-orientated, humble, and powerful beacons of light, as you will discover for yourself as you listen to our conversations. With young ones from ages 3 to 34, the topics of conversation will cover everything from God to politics, from service to subtle energy. No sensationalizing here. These children have nothing to sell. They are selfless givers made manifest on this earth to open the eyes and the hearts of the many. On behalf of the children, the World Puja Network, and I, Maureen Moss, we welcome you to our show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our premiere launch of Children of the New Earth. I want to thank everybody who has been sending me incredible emails and telling me about your children and telling me how much this is meaning to you and to your children. That is the very reason that we decided to put this show on air and to send it all over the world, because we knew we had to give the children of this new earth a voice. And so if you haven't listened to the first part of our premiere launch with my daughter, Nasata Lamas, you might want to go to the archives. It's free, of course, and you can listen to it. It's absolutely fantastic. And leading up to what we're going to talk about tonight, which is something I think everybody is going to kind of have a jaw-dropping moment for a minute, because we're going to be talking about things that you may have heard about, but not from the perspective of one who was born wide awake. So what we're going to talk about tonight is karmic ancestral lineage with my daughter, Nasata Lamas. For those of you that didn't listen last time, even though I know you're going to probably go listen to the archives, let me just share a little bit about her with you. She came into this world wide awake and remembering what was before and living a childhood really in the twilight of multidimensional experiences and communication. And now, as an adult with a vast accumulation of memory and guidance, she walks her path in co-creation with the earth, working together to bridge the worlds of all beings in all dimensions, creating an existence of thriving, cohesive harmony. And as her mother, I can say that is absolutely the truth. She is one brilliant beacon of love and light. She's also very deeply committed to the healing and awakening of the human race at large, as well as the earth and the elementals of the earth. She is an absolutely gifted creator who has spent her life in communication and rhythm with nature. Wherever she can go get dirty and be with nature, that's where she is. And with fervor and grace, she says, she walks intentionally her path, embraced in co-creation with this great earth, and working together to merge the world and heal the matrices of our existences together, past, present, and future. And I'd like to give you all her website. It's www.manynatures.com. There's so many things there that are incredible. Her photography, the crystal grids that she creates, and her sessions that she does on lineage mastery and birthright mastery is absolutely incredible. So please enjoy her site. So, my dear daughter, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. I'm glad you're back with me again tonight, even though you're with me all the time. I'm glad you're with us all, sharing with the world. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
I know it's not something you love to do. I brought that up on our first show, and of course, whenever we've done any live events, I know you don't like to be out in the forefront. You're always kind of working behind the scenes, and you even do that with the earth and the ancestry and all the lineages and everything else. So I really sincerely, from my deepest heart, want to thank you, and I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks. So let's talk about this. Yeah, I know you have become quite the expert on it, actually, and have gone into many dimensions to understand deeper and to actually recreate and realign the karmic ancestral lineage. So what exactly is the realignment of karmic ancestral lineage?
Well, that's quite a loaded question, isn't it?
That's a loaded question. But I know you've got the lowdown.
Yeah. Well, there is. Let me just start by saying that the human body is a vehicle with all kinds of cords and channels and encodements hooked up to it, and we're hooked up in so many different ways that I think that people don't really totally realize it. And we have blood lineage, which is, in our DNA from this lifetime, from our parents and their parents, and there's that whole hookup. But we also have, our blood lineage is in the third dimension, and our body here is in the third dimension. But we have many, many other dimensions to us, and there is a system in all of our other dimensional selves that's just like this one, as far as like how DNA works and cellular structure and all of that. It's just more in an energetic form. So karma is kind of like our blood lineage, and past life patterning is part of our energetic DNA structure as well. And so we have all these different lines that are plugged into our current experience of being, and they all need to be addressed, cleared, worked on, amplified, all of these different things. They're all different from each other, but they're all the same thing. Does that make sense?
Can you tell me the difference?
Well, they differ only in their resonance. So the lower down you get in dimension, the denser you get. So the lowest down here is third dimensional lines, which is just blood lineage. And what lives in our body's cellular structure through how we're genetically made up. So that's one. And then slightly above that is our karmic lineage, which works exactly the same way, but the way that it's different is that it's up and out of this dimension a little bit. So it has a little bit more of a faster frequency of energy. And then above that, there's another faster frequency, and above that, and above that. And actually, it keeps on going up all the way until you get to your very, very highest self, way, way out there in the light. So there's lots and lots and lots of layers, and the only way that they really are different from each other is in their resonance of energy, how fast their energy signature moves, and then also how we can access them. Because obviously you can access your blood lineage by, looking it up in paperwork, but you can't really do that with your karmic lineage. I mean, okay, maybe you could, but...
When you said, because I want to make sure everybody really understands that the only difference is in their resonance. I want everybody to be really clear, because we've read so much and heard so much on often third dimensional levels about karma, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you were saying, as you go up and you spin in the resonance in the different dimensions, and things spin at a different resonance field, that's really what makes a difference. But before we get into all of this, I want to make sure that everybody really gets what that means.
What resonance means?
Yeah, and what makes the difference between them. You said really the only difference is in the resonant field. So because we're talking about this, I want to be really clear about what makes the difference and what is actually the difference that we can really understand here before we start to go into why it's important that everything be cleared and aligned.
Okay. Resonance is our personal energy makeup and how it vibrates when activated in different ways, either by your own intention, the environment around you, or an interaction with another source of energy. It's like a guitar string. It sits there until it's plucked, and then when it's plucked, it vibrates and a sound comes. And every being has their own unique signature of resonance. So if we can clean up the input to our resonant field, then we can become more centered, grounded, and a clearer channel of light. And as we go up in dimensions, our resonant field shifts in that the frequency of energy gets faster. So the lower down you get, the slower the frequency is, meaning the slower it vibrates. And the higher up you go, the faster it vibrates. So the sound obviously changes, and the interaction between the energy fields and the sounds, they all change as you go up. The signature stays the same, which means, the soul, each soul has a specific signature. It's like its thumbprint. And so in your resonant field, you have your soul signature, and everybody's is different. Every single being who's ever been made in creation has a different signature, just like a thumbprint. And within that resonance, like let's use musical notes as an example. Let's say that a person resonates at the note of G, and their signature is more like a G sharp. So if someone else comes along who's also a G, but maybe they're a G flat because their signature is different, the two will go together because they're similar enough. They're still a G, but there's an octave difference, or not an octave difference. There's a combination of sound that creates another sound, and that's what resonance is. So people go through their life just kind of living up and down in their resonance. They don't know what they're doing most of the time with that. And everything that they have around them, their environment, the people in their life, the things they do in their routine, could be completely the wrong resonance for them, and they don't even know it. So it mixes everything up. So clearing up all of those things is really important, because then we can be stronger in our key note, and that feeds our soul signature. And when our soul signature is fed, then we have all kinds of access to everything higher and outside of ourselves. So we can reach our karmic lineage, and we can reach our, everything out there. It's actually in there, really, but I say out there because it seems like it's out there. But
okay, so first of all, you said that there's most people are not operating in their soul signature, and they really need to clean that up. And I bet people that are listening to us says, well, first of all, how would I even know whether I am or not? And I'm going to go back again to our topic, which is, the karmic ancestral lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I don't know that I'm really clear on the difference between karma, past lives, and blood ancestry. So those two things I want to get really clear about, so our audience is really clear with it.
Okay. So blood ancestry is what I already said. It's our genetic follow-through from our parents and their parents before us, and it's the encodements that live in our DNA and our cellular structure passed down through our blood, through our family. Karma is the grid structure that follows us along through our lifetimes, gathering information on all kinds of things, lessons, activity on our path, basically. And it keeps us within this certain behavioral lesson learning pattern structure based on how far we've gotten with our lessons. Past lives is a whole ball of wax. It's a lot of times people think of past lives as something that happened before, hence the word past. But really, what's going on is not in a linear straight line with a start point and a finish point. It's more like a big sphere with points all along the surface of it that are happening simultaneously. And our being, our soul, is in the center of that sphere. And our consciousness from that center point reaches out to certain points on the sphere and experiences a lifetime like we're experiencing right now, sitting here. So it opens a whole ball of wax because of the fact that it's not in a straight line. So it's not as easy for the brain to grasp. The brain wants to say, well, I can go back in time 200 years and figure out what was going on with me then so that I can figure out what my lessons are now. That's not how it works. So
okay, how does it work?
How it works, it's really simple, actually. The process can be a little long and complicated, but the answer to that is really, really simple. The best way, the easiest, the clearest way to totally plug in to all of those things, all of those three different things that I mentioned, including other things that I haven't mentioned, is to get as much into the center of that sphere as possible. Most people are not even there at all. They're not even aware of it. So the first step is awareness of it. And then the next steps after that are to do anything that it takes, which for everybody it's going to be a different process, but to do anything that it takes to get your consciousness gathered back into that point and get your light activated back into that point, to get centered, grounded in your whole entire total self, right in the middle of yourself. And most people live outside of themselves and outside of time, really. They live forward and backward and all kinds of things, mostly because of the mind and the ego. So there are a lot of ways to make that happen. We can talk about some of the ways.
I think it's important that we do. I think it's very important because I want this to be really clear for everybody so we understand why are we even talking about the realignment of the karmic ancestral lineage.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead. Let's
well, because it's a sphere, it all feeds itself. So when you do one thing, it's like to get one thing, you have to do this other thing, but to get that other thing, you have to do the other thing. It's all connected. It's all the same thing, really. So clearing your grids is really important. There's lots of different ways to do that. Going into your ancestry and getting conscious of it, first of all, is really important. Your blood ancestry, let me just be more clear. If you don't know where you've come from, that might be something that would be really important for you to find out. There's lots of different ways to do that. You can ask family members, you can start researching family tree stuff, and it might seem a little bit nebulous or like, why am I doing this really? I mean, what does it have to do with my real life? But it has a lot to do with your real life because it's kind of like being in high school but forgetting all of the classes that you've had before you. How are you going to know how to spell your name if you didn't go to kindergarten? It's kind of like that. So if you don't know where you've come from, if you don't know what you're made up of, it's way harder to be clear about who you are in your center. So finding out where your blood comes from is a really important step. That's something that's totally approachable in this world that everybody can do without any guidance, really. Mm-hmm. Then past that point, it gets a little more challenging maybe for some people because they might not know where to go to get help to do it. But getting really, really clear about what your karma is important.
I want to talk about that specifically.
Okay.
Because I think before we talk about the past life thing, because the mental mind and the ego and certainly other people's input, I feel contort what we quote unquote think our karma might be. So that's why I want, yes, and that's why I really want you to, because I know you know this well, I really want you to explain this part of finding out what one's karma really is, the ways to go about doing that. I think that was great the way you discussed the blood ancestry, and of course we're going to get much deeper into this. But let's talk about the karma and then the past lives and the ways, the absolute ways that people can do this.
Okay. Well, first of all, karma is not something that can be done with one day just because you've reached a point where you've paid all of your debt. I think people think of karma as like a debt system. You know, well, I did this, so I'm paying it off now. It has nothing to do with that, really. And it also doesn't get done with just because the stars are lined up in a certain way to make a doorway out of it, you know, like, oh, the Aquarian something or other, you know, I mean, yes, we are really pushed around by the alignments of the planets and stuff, but it doesn't really have to do anything with karma. It's a really complex and sticky matrix tied by extremely strong lines of energy. It's reinforced by universal laws, by contracts, by seals, encodements, patterns, loopholes, all kinds of things. So it's essential to go through and break or heal or reintegrate or merge all of those matrix lines, not just to address the emotional checklist of buildup of behavioral circumstances that created the karma in the first place. It's not really work that you can do by thinking about it. You know, the brain wants to be in charge of everything. So it wants to say, oh, well, I understand this and I know what to do about it. And if I don't know what to do about it, I'm going to go read a book and find out what to do about it. It doesn't work that way. You can't.
Right.
What was that?
Or call a psychic.
Yeah, or call a psychic, or, you know, you can't fix this stuff by reading about it or having somebody else tell you what's wrong with you. Because the truth is, there's nothing wrong with you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. Karma is not bad. It's just misunderstood. You can't also, I really want to address this too. You also can't clear up anything. I mean, anything, by just doing affirmations, you know, standing in the morning in the mirror and saying, I am this or I am that or my karma's clear or whatever. It doesn't work that way. It's good for our self-esteem to do that. It's good for our body cells to feel positive words going through it and things like that, yes, but clearing karma is not going to be reached that way. So I just really wanted to make a point of that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it requires, first of all, a deep soul inquiry. I mean, like deep, not just sitting down and saying, I think I'm going to meditate and find out what's my problem. You know, it's like super deep. Like you need to be willing to walk through the flames of whatever comes up, whether you understand it or not, persevering through the confusion and pain of the emotional body, tackling the mental body like a lion with no mercy. I mean, it's sometimes really challenging to get past the mind. But then once you do get past the mind and all the emotions come up of this karmic patterning, especially if you've already set down your mind, the emotions aren't going to make any sense whatsoever. And most of the time, people get to that point and they stop because they either get confused or overwhelmed or feel like something, like they're doing it wrong, if they have a whole bunch of grief come up and then they just decide that they cannot deal with that grief and they've had enough and they have to go to work tomorrow and whatever. So what I mean by deep is like a willingness to be diligent through the entire process of whatever comes up and whatever you find, whether you are going to like it or not. I guarantee that we've all done things that we're not going to like to see, including good things too. But so the number one ingredient of clearing your karma or finding out what your karma is to be really, really, really willing. That's the number one above all else thing, is to be really, really willing and to have a strength of commitment to doing the work of it that nothing's going to shake you or throw you off the path. So that way, whatever comes up, you're still going to be walking the line of it.
Okay, and what if somebody said, Nasatala, okay, I'm really willing, now what do I do?
The tricky part in this is that there's not an answer. There's not one answer that's going to apply to everybody. That's why you can't just go read a book to figure out how to do it.
Okay, but a little bit of help.
Yeah. Everybody is so different from each other. So the first step is willingness. The second step, I would say, is to start an inquiry. However you're comfortable with doing that, and then ask for help. Ask for help from people who might know a little bit about it. Ask for help from your guides. Ask for help from yourself, most of all, your higher self, the part of you that knows better, that's clear already. Ask for guidance in your dream time. Just ask and keep asking until you start getting answers from whatever source. And I want to talk a little bit about sources just very, very quickly.
Sure, please.
Yeah, is that sometimes people say, I need help, out into the universe, and they're pretty much willing to take it from any source that it comes from without even questioning what the source is. And so just as a really quick side note, I would like to say that it's very, very important that when you ask for help or guidance, that you ask in a clear way, that it comes from the light, that it comes from the guides that are good for you, and that it comes from a very clear source with no filtering systems in between. Because sometimes we can get a message from way far out there in dimensions, and it can originally come from a clear source, but if it travels through a whole bunch of filters, it's not going to come to us clean by the time it gets to our brain. So when you ask for help, when you ask for guidance, ask for it in a way that you're asking for clear guidance, that it's not coming through any kind of funky business, and that it's coming from a source that is completely clean and pure and of the light, of source light, if you want to go all the way there. That's the only place I ask for guidance from at this point. So that's just a little important side note that I thought everybody needs to hear.
Yeah, they do. So go ahead with what you were saying. Perfect.
So asking for guidance, asking for help, asking for yourself to start the process, because, we think that we don't know what we're doing and that everybody else has to help us do it, but we totally, totally know what we're doing. It's designed into us to grow. It's designed into us, just like a seed, to move forward, to go towards the light. And so even if our brain doesn't understand the process of it, the rest of us knows what it's doing. So once you make an intention with your willingness to do whatever it takes, and you call forth guidance, help, process, whatever it is for you, your self, your own self is going to kick into gear and start making things happen. Then the next step after that is to start paying attention. That's really important. We go through our life step by step, kind of blundering through without paying attention to a whole lot of things. So start.
What are we paying attention to?
Start paying attention. Paying attention to symbols and signs. Paying attention to things that start to be in a pattern. Things that happen over and over again, either emotional or in your environment, or ways that you feel, and then you feel that way again, and then maybe pay attention to why that could be happening that way. Pay attention to when somebody comes up to you randomly and starts talking to you about something that actually you were thinking about 10 minutes before. I mean, pay attention. You know, there's a lot of times where stuff like that gets missed because we're too busy or we don't want to connect with people. Start connecting with people. Connect with yourself. Connect with other people. That's what we're doing here. Holding hands, walking the path together. I'm so tired of walking the path alone. Aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not good. It's not the point. It's not why we came here.
Right.
So we got to find each other and support each other.
And love each other.
And love each other as much as possible.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So definitely start paying attention. Start paying attention to patterns, little messages. You know, you're driving on the freeway and a bee lands on your rear view mirror, and for some reason, even though you're going 70 miles an hour, the bee does not get off your car until you get all the way home. Pay attention to that. You might not know what it means. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't know what it means. You don't have to categorize everything and understand everything for it to still be happening to you. So start.
But if that happened, Satala, because that's a really good example of something too that I just had an experience of with the bee that helped me remember something. But if that happened, what would that be symbolic of, for example? Because I think people need to understand, okay, more than, okay, I just drove 70 miles and a bee still stayed on my car. What would that mean?
Well,
for example.
It comes back to individual experience, because a bee is going to mean a different thing to every person. It could mean to someone that they need a reminder of how strong they are to stick through something that's difficult. It could be a message to someone of working in it, because bees are they're like bees and ants both are the workers of the earth, and they make, bees make the nectar, and it could be about nectar. It could be about so many different things. But if you're paying attention in such a way that you're not just seeing the picture of it, but you're paying attention from an inner place, like, what could this possibly mean for me? You're going to get your own answer.
Yeah, I wanted you to clear that up, and I don't know if I told you this or not, but I want to bring this up because this was a real key for me the other day, and you brought up bees. I've been having this whole thing with bees. Mm-hmm. And the other day, I watched, I'm sharing this with the audience, I was going through confusion, and I was outside on the patio, and I've been having a lot of experiences with bees, so I thought that was interesting that you brought that up. But I literally saw a bee get caught up in a cobweb, and cobwebs are really sticky. And when I saw the bee going into the cobweb, I got a broom and I got it down from where it was, and I was really paying close attention. And I was helping the bee get out from the cobweb, which was very, very difficult because he was so wrapped up in it. And I then I started crying. And I'm okay saying this on air, as most people know that have listened to me for years. I allow myself to be very vulnerable if it'll help anybody. And I was crying so hard because I was watching him struggling inside of the cobweb, and I felt that bee was me that was struggling inside of the cobweb that I had been in. And so, a long story made short, I got him partially free without hurting him, and he was struggling. And then I decided to do a healing on him, and I noticed coming out of my mouth were the words, "Come on, you can do this. You can get through this. You're strong enough to fight through this. Come on, you can do this." And I was laying my hands over him, and so help me God, that bee still had the cobweb on him, but he got up and he flew away. He flew away. Oh, it's a chill going for me. So I just wanted to further what you just said. No coincidence, and we certainly did not plan anything that we're talking about at all here, that I wanted to share that story because it's so important to what Nasatullah has been saying about paying attention to everything because it's so symbolic. So once again, it's my pleasure to just use myself as an example, and then we can carry on from there.
Yeah, it's a perfect example, actually.
Yeah.
And it's not only a perfect example of noticing, but it's also a perfect, completely perfect example of what I was saying is that we have our own answers. Mm-hmm. You didn't know anything about bees. You didn't know anything about why you were seeing that symbolically and whatever, but you paid attention from an inner place of inquiry. Mm-hmm. And you got what you needed to get out of that. You had movement in your emotional body. I mean, that's a really big key right there. And you didn't need anybody to tell you what that meant or how to do it. You already knew. You just have to pay close enough attention to where you can allow the lessons to come to you.
Yeah, the opportunities, really.
Yep, the opportunities. Yep.
So let's go and get a little bit more on track with the karmic ancestral lineage and why it's so critical for us to get clear, to heal, and to align with our ancestral blood lineage.
Okay.
And thank you for everything you said up to that point, because that was just perfect.
Yep. The way that we are functioning here right now is relatively dysfunctional. And one of the biggest reasons for that is that we're plugged in to so many different matrices that we're completely unaware of that are running us. They're running our life. They're running our actions. They're running our attractor fields, all of the things that come into our life for certain reasons. And if the reason it's really important to clear all of that stuff is so that I'm going to go back to the bee again, if you don't mind, is that we're covered in this web and we can't fly. We can't get out. We can't do anything except for struggle around and in place, really. So we think we're walking through our life, but really we're walking in place and turning around in circles all the time. And the reason for that is that all of these patterns and encodements and stuff keep us spinning in place. A lot of times people come to me, and I know they come to you also, and they say, I feel like I'm going 90 miles an hour, but my wheels are spinning right in place, and, the mud is just flying out from under. And that is very, very true that many, 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 many of us exist that way here. And so if we can unplug from that type of living, we can actually move forward. Imagine that. I mean, to be free, right?
That's the point.
Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, we're never going to get anywhere unless we're free doing it. So the reason why it's important is because of freedom. That's my answer to that. And ancestral lineage and karmic lineage and past life lineage, I'll just say, all have these really complicated, multidimensional, many-lined cords that run through us, run through our being. They run through our body, through cellular memory, and they run through our being through emotional memory and all kinds of other types of memory. And when you tap into it, a lot of times people can sort of tap into it, like they'll have a past life regression, let's just say, and they'll remember something, and then they realize that it makes them feel really, really uncomfortable, but then they think, oh, it's good, I feel uncomfortable, I'm tapping into something important. So then they go after it, and they find that something that happened from a really long time ago is something that's still kind of happening in their life now because they never cleared the pattern of it. So that's, pretty common knowledge. That's how people are used to doing it. The thing is that when you become aware of it, that's good. When you process through it emotionally, that's good. But it doesn't get rid of it. It helps the mind to feel better about it, but it doesn't get rid of it.
Okay. How do we unplug?
Yeah, the next step after that is to track the grid line energetically with your being to either unplug it or amplify it, depending on what it is. Some things don't need to be unplugged. Some things just need to be reactivated. So, So that's another one of those things. I'm not going to be able to just say, this is how you do it, step 1, 2, 3, because every single line is different. Every single person is different. Every single story is different.
But give us a little, like a general understanding of tapping into something. I'll give you an example. In a past life, so we can use some kind of an example. I and you both have a lot of memories of past lives, but I'll use one where I remembered coming across the desert in the 1800s, and it was a covered wagon. I'm not going to use one of my, I was this and I was that. I'm going to use something very common. And my parents were dead. I realized that my parents were dead. I had this regression, and I happened into this town, and I was in a covered wagon, and I was very dusty and dirty and sad and lonely. And I remember at that time that I went to work in what one would call a saloon at that time. And shortly after that, I remembered throwing myself into a fire and actually killing myself, committing suicide. And so my memory of that past life through a regression, I felt that whole thing burn up and clear. But let's just use that as an example. How would one unplug from that?
Okay, because it's a really good example.
Good. Okay.
It's a really, really good example because it's fairly common that people have had instances where their death was not a natural death, or there's some kind of grief pattern in there. It's a really common thing to come up for a past life regression that most of the time when you have a past life regression, the things that come up first are the things that have to do with death or grief or violence. So I'm really glad that we're using this example because it's across the board a really common one for everybody.
That's why I was guided to use that. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes when people get a regression, just remembering it, just realizing it, and then according to whatever type of body worker they're working with, it can be cleared right on the spot. And then other times, you go home with it and you kind of process your way through it until you're feeling done. And like I said a few minutes ago, at that point, it doesn't, a lot of times we feel like we're finished with it, but it doesn't stop there. So the best way the best way to clear a line like that is to close your eyes, breathe. I know that sounds so super plain, but it's true. Breath is really important because it brings you into your body, and so you can utilize the tool of your body to track the line. It's because we're not doing it with our mind, remember? And so you breathe, you get all of your cells oxygenated. It's very, very important. And then with your being, not with your mind, but with your being, maybe you could think of it as like your heart center or your chakra system or something that's an energetic of your body that you can feel or that you're familiar with. From that place, you can visualize a line of energy tapping into your body somewhere and going back in time to that lifetime or that instance in time. And you can visualize hopping onto that line with your energy field and gathering it up. You can just pick it right up, just like you're walking on a path picking up pebbles, and go all the way back to the point of origin, and then be at the point of origin. Be at it. Be in your body in the present moment and be at the point of origin at the same time. That's the key right there. To be in both places at the same time neutralizes the line.
Yeah, I got chills on that. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that was really important.
Yep.
That was, and as you said, it chills going through me big time. It's we all have it in us. You know, it's like Glenda, the Good Witch in The Wizard of Oz, when she says, "You've always had it, my dear. You've always had it."
Mm-hmm.
And having you as my daughter, of course, is such a blessing, because sometimes I think you're the mother, I'm the daughter. And of course, sometimes I'm the mother and you're the daughter. But it's been very, very helpful in having clarity in areas. And you have, I believe, helped me realize the importance of really not getting caught up in the world, but getting very diligent and committed to realigning in very, very strong ways with our highest light, with our universal signature. And I think now, in the times that we are living in, and feel free to comment on this if you feel to, we are so caught up in concerning ourselves with what's going to happen in 2012, or how are we going to make enough money to pay the mortgage, given the financial collapse in the world. And we're worried about the things to come and how we're going to do it. So our minds are staying very busy. And I think in a way it's a purposeful throw-off, not for our highest good, that we really have to sit down, don't we, Nasatullah, and decide what's the most important thing for us in this lifetime to evolve and to really, really, I often say, like a woman with her head on fire, go after it and make nothing come before it. Mm-hmm. Is that your clarity too?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
To be willing to do whatever it takes in every single moment, even if that means setting aside or setting down something that you previously had top priority on, like in your life, because we get trapped. I mean, we get so trapped in our daily life thinking that if I don't do this one thing, then everything else is going to be all messed up, and it's such a trap, because if you're ruminating around in place down in the mud with a sack over top of your head, you're not going to be able to see what you need to do to get out of the bog in the first place. So you can thrash around and reach around and try to make things work and make all your choices from that place,
and
just keep thinking. Or you can spend some time and energy taking the sack off of your head so that you can see the path out.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, really important.
And isn't it so, Ms. Atala, that once because I believe I've said this often, we are heroes in a transition stage. And once we clear our karmic past, it clears it for the end. I mean, this is like a wrap-up. It really does clear it for the entire ancestral lineage, does it not?
Mm-hmm.
That's the point that I really think we need to, to make right now, because that was the point of this whole conversation. It wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it goes back to the sphere, and that every single point has to do with every single other point. So when you're really authentically clearing your lines, you can do it towards the left or towards the right, but it's going to clear the whole thing eventually.
Mm-hmm.
It all has to do with it's all holding hands with it's all interlaced with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the same thing.
And I want to use another example as a point too. And I'm going to say this too. Both of my parents died when they were in their 40s, and they died a year apart from each other of cancer. And I remember I was young. I was in my young 20s. And I remember the doctor and others saying to me, well, you're pretty much shot, Maureen. I mean, you might as well call it a day in your 40s, because you've got it from both sides. The chances of your dying of cancer are huge. And I remember when that was said to me, as a warrior that I am, I said, that's not going to happen. I will not let that happen. And I did not know quite what I was doing, but I held steady to that. And as you know, I have faced that and refused. And I'm about 10 years older than both of my parents were. When they died, and actually all of my family died very early on. And I remember being at a particular point in California, the Point Lobos actually, a couple of years ago, and I was guided to go to this really high rock. I had to climb up to it, and I was sitting on it, and my father came to me, and he said, thank you for taking care of this. Mm-hmm. And I knew then in that moment that I, with that determination and physically fighting it, knowing that it was a karmic thing, an ancestral thing that had gone back and on for so long, that got broken. That line got broken. Otherwise, I couldn't be 57 years old living here right now.
Yep. And the reason why he said thank you is because when you break a line like that, it doesn't just break it for you. You took care of the whole line.
And that's the point of our conversation, and that's why I brought that up, because that's exactly, and that's something that I didn't know that then. I wasn't aware of that then to the degree that I am now. And it is so meaningful. I want to say this to all of our audience. With people that come to me for sessions or Nasafa for sessions, one of the things that we know is that to be able to break a pattern, use your life not only for your highest light, but to unhook everybody else from their history and their karmic hostage situations from all lives that they've encountered and could not complete for themselves. We have the ability, that's how powerful we are, to not only clear it for us, but to clear it for them, because they didn't know. This wasn't even spoken about then. Isn't that right?
Yeah. It's barely even spoken about now.
and this is why we've brought it up, and this is part of the reason I'm doing, this show, The Children of the New Earth, because you all have information that most of us don't have, actually. The vast majority of us don't have. So the topics of conversation are critical topics of conversation, and you all know that. And as the more and more that I've talked to, more children that I've talked to, and young adults that I've talked to that have been born wide awake, it's astounding to me what's going to be brought forth that hasn't been addressed and needs to be addressed, and is the whole point of why we're here. Mm-hmm. And I know my relationship with you changes everything for me. It changes my absolute taking a step forward every day, having a more conscious direction to go in. And that's, again, the point of the show and why we launched it together, you and I. And and I'm so very, very, very grateful that that you were the one actually that thought this would be for our second show together, before we then will have all these other young ones and children coming on in the months ahead, that this was something that was important to talk about, and because of empowering us now, wasn't it, Nasatala?
It's, I was just now when you were talking, I was just thinking, it's so important for us to be clear. Well, obviously, right. But the thing that has separated us quite a bit is this notion that, there's certain people that have come here and they have certain skills or abilities, and then there's other people who have come here and they don't, and they're lost and they're just never going to make it. And it's not true. Right. It's not true. I want to yell it from the rooftops. It's not true. There are certain people who have come here, yes, with their eyes a little more open, but it just means that their eyes are a little more open to what's already there naturally, and everybody has it there naturally. They just have to figure out how to open their eyes, And so this kind of work and these kind of conversations and the conversations that you're going to have with more kids and more people are really important, because it's so significant to our process to connect with each other and to realize that we all have it. We all have clarity. It's just under the next veil, that needs to be removed. And you just need to figure out how to remove whatever your veil is or veils are,
Or know where to get help.
Yeah, and know where to get help or guidance. And a big point that I want to make in this conversation is that while it's essential to get guidance from other people or other beings, the big point that I want to make is that you have it within you. You don't need to get it from outside of you as much as you need to get it from yourself. Pay attention. Start waking up with yourself. Start asking yourself for what you should do for your own answers. It's super important that you start to feel the feeling of being empowered, of being self-empowered, and going to the library of your soul for your answers. It's like my biggest point I want to make.
That was phenomenal. Absolutely. The whole purpose of why World Puja exists anyways is all about empowerment. That was so, so well put and so important that I don't really want to say another thing after that. I'd like to leave on that note with the exception of telling you again how much I love you. Thank you for being my daughter. Thank you for being the mess of being of light and love that you are. What an honor and a privilege to have had you join me on our first two shows of Children of the New Earth. Thank you, my precious daughter. And for everyone else, again, Nasatala's website is manynatures.com. This is your host, Maureen Moss, on Children of the New Earth, reminding you to love yourself. It's the only way the world knows how to treat you. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Bye for now.